The pursuit of knowledge is a journey that often takes the brightest minds across oceans and continents. For countless young scholars, the American university system represents a beacon of opportunity, a place where years of rigorous study can blossom into groundbreaking research that might one day change the world. The University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign is one such institution. Nestled in a quiet, leafy community, surrounded by the vast agricultural heartland of the American Midwest, it has long been a welcoming haven for international students. It is a place characterized by sprawling libraries, cutting-edge laboratories, and a profound sense of safety. But in the early days of June 2017, that sense of security was shattered by a mystery that would span the globe, mobilizing federal investigators and uniting two nations in a desperate search for answers. This is the story of Yingying Zhang, a brilliant young scientist whose pursuit of the American dream was tragically cut short, and the relentless, unprecedented forensic investigation that brought her perpetrator to justice. To truly understand the gravity of this case, one must first understand the extraordinary person at its center. Yingying Zhang was 26 years old, a visiting scholar from Nanping, a city in the Fujian province of China. She was the pride of her family. Coming from a modest working-class background, her parents had poured everything they had into her education, recognizing early on that their daughter possessed a rare and formidable intellect. Yingying was not just smart. She was driven by a deep, altruistic desire to make a tangible difference in the world. Her academic focus was environmental science, specifically the complex mechanics of photosynthesis and crop yields. In a world facing the looming threat of climate change and food insecurity, Yingying's research was vital. She envisioned a future where she could return to China as a university professor, teaching the next generation of scientists how to maximize agricultural output to feed a growing global population. When she arrived in Illinois in April of 2017, she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. Her colleagues at the university quickly came to know her as a dedicated, cheerful, and fiercely intelligent researcher. She spent her days in the laboratory, meticulously analyzing data, and her evenings communicating with her family and her longtime boyfriend back in China. She was planning to be married later that year. Her future was meticulously planned, bright, and full of promise. June 9, 2017, began as an ordinary Friday. Yingying had an appointment that afternoon to sign a lease for a new apartment off campus. It was a mundane errand, a simple administrative task that countless college students perform every semester. At approximately 1:30 in the afternoon, she left her laboratory and headed toward the local bus stop. The transit system in Urbana-Champaign is widely used and highly reliable, serving as the primary circulatory system for the university's massive student body. Yingying sent a text message to the property manager, letting them know she was running slightly late but was on her way. Surveillance cameras captured her standing at the bus stop, waiting. A bus approached, but she realized too late that it was the wrong route, and it pulled away without her. It was a minor inconvenience, the kind of small delay that happens every day. But what happened next would trigger one of the most exhaustive investigations in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a black Saturn Astra pulled up to the curb where Yingying was standing. Surveillance footage, captured from a distance by a city camera, showed Yingying leaning down to speak with the driver through the passenger side window. The interaction lasted for a few moments. There were no signs of a struggle, no outward indicators of distress. To any casual observer, it simply looked like a student asking for directions, or perhaps recognizing an acquaintance. After a brief conversation, Yingying opened the door and stepped into the vehicle. The car merged back into traffic and drove away. Yingying Zhang was never seen alive again. When Yingying failed to return to the laboratory and did not respond to messages from her colleagues or her boyfriend, a quiet alarm began to sound. By that evening, the quiet alarm had escalated into a full-blown panic. It was entirely out of character for Yingying to be unreachable. She was meticulous about communication, deeply responsible, and closely connected to her academic and personal networks. Her colleagues contacted the university police, who initially treated the situation as a standard missing person case. However, as the hours ticked by with no digital footprint, no credit card activity, and no cell phone pings, the authorities realized they were dealing with something far more sinister. The immediate response from the university community was overwhelming. Thousands of students, faculty members, and local residents mobilized. Flyers bearing Yingying's smiling face were plastered on every bulletin board, storefront, and bus shelter in the city. WeChat groups, the primary communication platform for the Chinese international student community, exploded with coordination efforts, search grids, and desperate pleas for information. The story quickly gained international traction, reaching the highest levels of the Chinese government and prompting the involvement of the FBI. When a foreign national disappears on American soil under suspicious circumstances, the jurisdictional lines shift. The FBI brings to the table a staggering array of resources, from advanced behavioral analysis to unparalleled digital forensics. The investigative team established a command center, pooling the talents of local detectives, state police, and federal agents. Their first and most critical task was to identify the vehicle that had driven away with Yingying. This is where the painstaking, unglamorous reality of modern police work comes into play. Investigators did not have a license plate number. They only had grainy, distant surveillance footage of a black car. To narrow down the search, the FBI turned to their forensic video analysis unit. Through advanced digital enhancement techniques, analysts were able to scrutinize the footage frame by frame. They determined the precise make, model, and year of the vehicle. It was a Saturn Astra, a relatively uncommon car in the United States, produced only for a short window of time. But the forensic analysts found something else, a detail so minute that it would have been invisible to the naked eye. The vehicle in the video had a cracked front passenger hubcap. Furthermore, it had a sunroof. These specific, defining characteristics were the breakthrough the investigation desperately needed. The authorities cross-referenced the vehicle make and model with state registration records, compiling a list of every black Saturn Astra registered in the surrounding county. There were only 18. Investigators began the methodical process of tracking down and inspecting every single one of those 18 vehicles. When they arrived at an apartment complex just a few miles from the university, they found a black Saturn Astra in the parking lot. It had a sunroof, and, crucially, it had a cracked front passenger hubcap. The vehicle was registered to a 28-year-old man named Brendt Christensen. Brendt Christensen was an American citizen and a former doctoral student in the physics department at the same university. On paper, he was an educated, intelligent individual. But a deeper dive into his background revealed a life that was rapidly unraveling. Christensen had recently dropped out of his prestigious PhD program. His marriage was deteriorating, and he was struggling with severe personal and academic failures. When investigators first interviewed Christensen on June 12th, just 3 days after Yingying's disappearance, he was calm and cooperative. He claimed that on the afternoon of June 9th, he had been at home playing video games and sleeping. However, when investigators confronted him with the fact that his vehicle perfectly matched the one in the surveillance footage, his story began to shift. He suddenly recalled that he had been driving around the campus that day and had offered a ride to an Asian woman who appeared distressed. He claimed that after driving for a few blocks, she panicked because he had made a wrong turn and he let her out of the car in a residential neighborhood. To the seasoned investigators of the FBI, Christensen's shifting narrative was a massive red flag. Innocent people rarely change their alibis when confronted with evidence. However, suspicion is not proof. At this stage, law enforcement had no physical evidence connecting Christensen to a crime. They had no crime scene, no signs of a struggle in his vehicle, and most importantly, they did not have Yingying. The authorities knew they had to tread carefully. If they arrested him prematurely without sufficient evidence, he could walk free, and the chance of finding Yingying might be lost forever. The FBI initiated a comprehensive, covert surveillance operation. They obtained warrants to monitor Christensen's phone, his internet activity, and his physical movements. The digital forensics team began examining his devices, and what they found painted a deeply disturbing psychological portrait. In the months leading up to Yingying's disappearance, Christensen had been frequenting dark corners of the internet. Investigators uncovered search histories related to the planning and execution of abductions. He had visited forums dedicated to extreme and illicit fantasies, specifically reading materials about how to successfully kidnap someone and transport them without drawing attention. This digital footprint provided the crucial context of premeditation. It demonstrated that the events of June 9th were not a crime of opportunity or a tragic accident, but the culmination of a dark, meticulously researched plan. Yet, investigators still needed definitive proof of what had happened to Yingying after she entered that apartment. The turning point in the investigation came through an extraordinary act of courage by a civilian. Christensen was involved in an extramarital relationship with a woman named Tara Bullis. Recognizing the gravity of the situation and the mounting suspicion surrounding her boyfriend, Bullis agreed to cooperate with the FBI. She became a confidential informant, making the terrifying decision to wear a covert listening device while interacting with a man suspected of a severe federal crime. For weeks, Bullis maintained her relationship with Christensen, engaging him in conversation while federal agents listened in real time from nearby surveillance vehicles. The psychological toll of this undercover work cannot be overstated. Bullis had to act entirely natural, suppressing her own fear and revulsion while gently steering conversations toward the events of June 9th. The climax of this covert operation occurred on June 29th during a community vigil held for Yingying Zhang. Hundreds of people had gathered on the university campus, holding candles, singing songs, and praying for the safe return of the missing scholar. In a display of profound detachment and hubris, Brendt Christensen attended this vigil, accompanied by Tara Bullis, who was wearing the wire. As they walked through the crowd of mourning students, the audio recording captured Christensen making a series of chilling statements. He pointed out people in the crowd, commenting on their physical characteristics and assessing them as potential targets. And then, he began to speak about Yingying. In a recorded confession that would become the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, Christensen admitted to bringing Yingying back to his apartment. He detailed the extreme measures he took to prevent her from leaving, acknowledging that she had fought back valiantly. He described her as resilient, confirming to the undercover informant that Yingying's life had ended within the walls of his bedroom. The audio recording provided the definitive, horrifying truth the FBI had been seeking. The following day, June 30th, 2017, federal agents arrested Brendt Christensen and charged him with kidnapping. With the suspect in custody, the investigation transitioned from a search and rescue operation to a massive forensic recovery effort. The FBI evidence response team descended upon Christensen's apartment. To the naked eye, the apartment appeared relatively clean. There were no obvious signs of a struggle or a crime. But forensic science operates on a microscopic level, guided by Locard's exchange principle, which states that every contact leaves a trace. Investigators employed advanced chemical testing, including the use of luminol. Luminol is a chemical compound that exhibits chemiluminescence, emitting a blue glow when it reacts with the iron found in hemoglobin. Even if a surface has been scrubbed, bleached, and thoroughly cleaned, luminol can detect residual traces that are invisible to the human eye. When technicians darkened the bedroom and applied the chemical, the room lit up. Investigators found forensic evidence indicating a severe biological event had occurred. They extracted sections of the carpet, the baseboards, and the drywall. They seized the mattress and the bedding. In the laboratory, DNA analysis confirmed the presence of Yingying Zhang's genetic material in multiple locations throughout the bedroom, including a baseball bat recovered from the apartment. The clinical, irrefutable science of DNA provided the silent testimony that Yingying could no longer give. It corroborated every detail of Christensen's recorded confession. The legal proceedings that followed were complex and highly scrutinized. Because the crime involved the use of a mechanism of interstate commerce, specifically a cellular phone and a motor vehicle, to commit a kidnapping that resulted in a loss of life, the case was elevated to the federal level. The United States Department of Justice made the rare and profound decision to seek the death penalty. This decision underscored the severity of the crime and the overwhelming nature of the evidence. The trial began in June 2019 at the federal courthouse in Peoria, Illinois. The courtroom was packed with journalists, members of the university community, and most heartbreakingly, Yingying's parents and brother, who had traveled from China. For the family, the trial was an agonizing ordeal, requiring them to listen to the clinical, sanitized, yet devastating details of their daughter's final hours, translated in real time through earpieces. The defense strategy was highly unusual, but legally calculated. In their opening statements, Christensen's attorneys stood before the jury and admitted that their client was responsible for the death of Yingying Zhang. They did not contest the kidnapping. They did not contest the forensic evidence. Their entire strategy was focused not on proving his innocence, but on saving his life during the penalty phase of the trial. They sought to portray Christensen as a man struggling with severe mental health issues, a brilliant mind that had succumbed to dark, uncontrollable impulses, exacerbated by substance abuse and the failure of his academic and personal life. However, the prosecution presented a meticulous, unyielding case that highlighted the premeditation and the calculated nature of the crime. They walked the jury through the digital forensics, showing the internet searches made months in advance. They presented the surveillance footage, the timeline of the vehicle, and the shifting alibis. They brought forensic experts to the stand to explain the DNA evidence recovered from the apartment, detailing how the biological material proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Yingying had been held against her will and had sustained fatal injuries in that specific location. The most powerful piece of evidence, however, was the audio recording from the vigil. The jury listened in stunned silence as the defendant's own voice echoed through the courtroom, detailing his actions with a clinical, detached arrogance. The prosecution emphasized the profound cruelty of attending a vigil for the very person he had taken from the world, viewing the mourning community not with remorse, but with a sense of twisted accomplishment. After a swift deliberation, the jury found Brendt Christensen guilty of kidnapping resulting in death, as well as 2 counts of making false statements to federal agents. The trial then moved to the penalty phase, where the jury had to decide between life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. During this phase, the court heard victim impact statements. Yingying's father spoke eloquently and through profound tears about the void left in their family. He described a daughter who was the light of their lives, a young woman whose ambition was matched only by her kindness. He spoke of the traditional Chinese expectation of generations caring for one another, and how the loss of their only daughter had destroyed their family's future. The emotional weight of these statements resonated deeply within the courtroom, bridging the cultural and linguistic divide through the universal language of grief. Under the federal system, a jury must be unanimous to impose a death sentence. After extensive deliberations, the jury informed the judge that they could not reach a unanimous decision. Some jurors believed the mitigating factors of Christensen's mental health warranted a life sentence, while others believed the premeditated nature of the crime demanded the ultimate punishment. Because they could not agree, the default sentence was automatically applied. Brendt Christensen was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never again walk free in society. At the sentencing hearing, the presiding federal judge delivered a scathing rebuke of the defendant. The judge highlighted the complete lack of remorse shown by Christensen throughout the proceedings, noting his refusal to provide the one piece of information that could offer the family a small measure of peace: the location of Yingying's remains. It was only after the trial, through an immunity agreement protecting his defense attorneys, that the devastating truth about the recovery effort was revealed. Christensen had disclosed to his lawyers that he had disposed of the remains in 3 separate garbage bags, which were placed in a dumpster outside his apartment complex. By the time investigators had zeroed in on him as a suspect, those dumpsters had been emptied. The contents had been transported to a commercial landfill, compacted multiple times, and buried under thousands of tons of municipal waste. Environmental experts and forensic anthropologists were consulted, but they determined that attempting to excavate the landfill would be practically impossible extraordinarily dangerous, and highly unlikely to yield any recoverable evidence due to the compaction process and the passage of time. For Yingying's family, this was the final, cruelest blow. They would not be able to bring their daughter home to rest, in accordance with their cultural traditions. The tragedy of Yingying Zhang left an indelible mark on the University of Illinois, the broader academic community, and the international student population across the United States. It shattered the illusion of absolute safety that many associate with quiet college towns, prompting universities nationwide to reevaluate their security protocols, transportation systems, and support networks for visiting scholars. Yet, from this unimaginable darkness, a legacy of light and support has emerged. The university, in collaboration with Yingying's family, established the Yingying Fund. This endowment is dedicated to supporting international students who find themselves in crisis while studying far from home. It provides emergency financial assistance, travel support for families facing tragic circumstances, and resources for mental health and community safety. Through this fund, Yingying's name continues to be a source of help and comfort to others, reflecting the very nature of the life she lived. Her story is a testament to the profound vulnerabilities faced by those who travel across the world in the pursuit of education, placing their trust in foreign communities. It is also a testament to the dedication of law enforcement professionals, from local patrol officers to federal forensic analysts, who worked tirelessly, utilizing every tool of modern science and investigative psychology to ensure that the person responsible could not hide behind a sanitized crime scene or a wall of lies. The conviction of Brendt Christensen ensures that he will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars, a necessary measure of legal accountability. But the courtroom can only provide legal resolution. It cannot provide true closure for a family that lost its brightest star. The enduring memory of Yingying Zhang is not defined by the actions of the man who took her life, but by the brilliance of her mind, the warmth of her spirit, and the enduring love of her family. As we reflect on the meticulous forensic work that brought a predator to justice and the devastating impact of his actions on 2 continents, we are left to ponder the fragility of our safety networks. In a world where millions of young people leave their homes every year to seek knowledge in unfamiliar lands, how do we balance the freedom essential for academic exploration with the vigilance required to protect the vulnerable?